here we stand, 10 years later, and 10 years wiser, hopefully. In these past 10 years, we've engaged in 2 wars. We're about to engage in military action in Libya. And 9/11 has been appropriated and used by parties. There are multiple films, there are multiple fiction stories about it. As a culture, we spend a lot of time processing this tragedy. And this semester, I've actually been doing some work in trauma literature and studying trauma literature. For my research project, I actually synthesized and attempted to create a short film format story set on Saturday directly following September 11th, 2001. And I have a short video to introduce the topic, 2 minutes. Actually, just back out, pull that one. And this is somewhat graphic. I won't show you anything too horrible, but this will certainly set the hopefully we don't have to install anything there. This was that film specifically from the Camera Planet archive was my main use. In the screenplay itself, the story is of 3 people unconnected in New York on the Saturday following the September 11th attacks. And through happenstance, the characters meet, and my character Lucas, who's a taxi driver, helps the other 2 characters process what just happened. And Lucas represents art. I'm an enormous fan of depth in art and using art to its full potential. And I try to use characters as a microcosm to represent the macrocosm. I want to show you what our culture has had to do to process. And represents what we've done through art. The intent of doing this was to go back and show these different methods of mourning, as well as how under these enormous situations of duress, people can heal by interacting with each other. And just simple human connections can allow this healing process to happen, and can allow us to understand tragedies. And my goal was to create it using the format of a single day novel, though it's a sort of film, akin to Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. I had taken another class on Mrs. Dalloway, and I thought the structure was a good one to build my story on, my narrative on, and it actually worked out really wonderfully for what I wanted. It's formatted for publication as a short film for the Western Writers Association. I haven't gotten a copyright yet, but I do plan on getting a copyright this semester. To research this project, I used various mediums, first-hand published accounts of the attack, multiple books and essays, archived video footage like what you just saw, hours of archived video footage. More on that. Not more of that. I used Flickr. Flickr was instrumental. You can sift through Flickr archives by date, and I used Google Earth to plot the actual scenes to get all of my shots. It was really wonderful. I could just fly through and find everything. They really got to know New York. But even 10 years later, it's hard to go back. It's still painful to watch those videos. You're immediately taken back to wherever you were standing on that morning. I was in daycare, dates me. But I can still remember watching it on the television. And the things we carry define us. There was a presentation recently downstairs on Tim O'Brien with the things we carry. And what we choose to bring with us, our baggage, really tells a lot about who we are. And as a country, we still refer back to 9/11 when we make political points. We still refer back to 9/11 when we discuss patriotism. It hasn't left us. And this being the 10-year anniversary, it's especially poignant to remember. And we need to understand what it is we carry. That's the goal of this project, was to synthesize and understand using my characters to explain different mourning styles. And for me, specifically, understanding comes from studying people. I'm a people watcher. Trauma literature itself is being more heavily studied these days with like the works of Tim O'Brien and Jarhead, another very good example of trauma literature. And what it allows us to do is digest a traumatic event using literature. Mouse by Art Spiegelman is another really good example. If you haven't read it, it's extremely poignant and witty. And it allows us to anchor the reality of the situation into fictional representation. We spend a lot of our lives in fiction, and rather than reality. We spend a lot of time in escapism. But we can use that escapism to understand reality, since it's kind of the language we use amongst ourselves most often, more often than realistic language. And Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway, it focuses on connections between people. Another reason why I wanted to use the single-day novel is because it lends itself really well to going in-depth with characters. And I allow, the human connections between people help us heal. She was processing post-World War I Britain, and I'm processing post-9/11, which is actually the name of the class, America. My first character who you meet is Lucas, who is a taxi driver. To understand the building, talk to a janitor. To understand a city, talk to a taxi driver to get the pulse, to get a feel for it. A priest takes confession, a taxi driver takes circumstantial confession. I really believe that people in the service industry spend a lot of time listening to people who don't realize that the service industry is listening. Working in a cafeteria, if anyone has ever worked in the food industry, then you hear wonderful stories, anecdotes, just simply by doing your job. Everyone has made an sort of impromptu journalist in the service industry, and it's wonderful. He's a societal custodian, which is sort of a theme in my work. It sounds so pretentious, in my work. But he's a societal custodian, and he allows the city to continue functioning after this. Then I have a sister who died 3 years ago. Lucas is actually in a much more advanced stage of mourning than the other two main characters. But Marina, they're both Hispanic, and they actually moved to New York. Marina moved there to study poetry in a New York college on a grant, and she died 3 years before the September 11th attack. It's not essential what she died of, but they used Pablo Neruda, and I used Pablo Neruda's poetry throughout the entire thing to move back and forth between Lucas and Marina. And the idea is that through art we can carry the dead. Through art we can revive them and have their spirit and their energy. If you've ever read a really amazing poetry, if you ever listened to really beautiful music, then there's that moment of recognition when you realize that human fingers did this, a human mind did this, someone breathed while creating this. And you make that connection. He uses Pablo Neruda to reconnect to his sister in the same way that I hope this allows us to reconnect to the living victims of 9/11. I also have a character named Leah, who is from New Orleans. She plays the trumpet. She comes to New York to study the trumpet, and she's the mourner. Since the attack, she's been incapable of returning to her apartment in South Kings, which overlooks the bay, and it has a really wonderful view of Ground Zero. And she hasn't been able to return. For her, I actually referenced the Jon Stewart episode, I apologize, where he's discussing very poignantly, he actually breaks down during the show. His view is now of the Statue of Liberty rather than the towers, but he's incapable of talking about this absence. And she's sort of a highlight of the basic stages of mourning and grief. I forget the lady's name, but there are 8 stages, and she's been going through them. And the reality is always more complex than those 8 stages, and you can move through them in any direction. I was in contact with a photographer named Ray Schwartz, and I'm going to show you a short series of photographs. And these are really the reason why I needed to do this semester, rather than simply present you with information. I needed to synthesize this with art for myself, because the people of New York are amazing, and they were so strong and so unified by this event. And it was it's a horrible tragedy, but the way the people responded is a triumph. And it's not looked at. We look at the dead so often when we think of 9/11, rather than the living victims who were extremely strong in the days following. And Ray Schwartz's these photos, most of them have less than 50 hits. You look at Flickr, and photographs of people falling from the buildings have millions of hits. The dead are exonerated, while the living who must continue with the traumatic event are oftentimes forgotten. And these photos. I can't spend too long on this, sorry. So I contacted the artist, the photographer, who gave me express permission to use that in this. You were literally some of the first people ever to view these photos, just because there was so little interest in. This was actually, as you read on the slide, the Strawberry Fields John Lennon Memorial, which is very appropriate in my mind, especially since you mentioned the overwhelming cry was for peace. My third character, my final main character, is Daniel, who has collected these papers that we saw falling in the video. And so much of the focus is on the event itself and not on the aftermath. And I see us as Daniel, as the archivist, carrying on the remains, the memory, years afterwards. And the numbers representative of actual people who died really don't tell the story. And in the video that we saw, as soon as the girl taking the video picks up the paper, she's speechless. It's suddenly real. It's suddenly physical. There's this horrible thing that she saw captured on film. It's suddenly a physical human reality, and it becomes almost sacred. And but something that human hands created. And in the end, Aaliyah is capable of returning to her apartment through a discussion she has with Lucas. And Daniel is capable of setting aside the papers. He's capable of processing what he has through a discussion on time philosophy. Part of trauma literature's role is to allow us to process. And I'm gonna